Hey everybody, today I'm going to show you if you have a spreadsheet with a bunch of different cells and they look like this, and you want them to look like this, stick around because I'm going to show you how to do that. The first thing that I'm going to go through is called the right function. Next to the cell that I want to separate, I'm going to double click in and I'm going to type equals right, and then I'm going to open up the parentheses. And once I do that, I can see that Excel is asking me for two different things. It's asking me for the text, which you can see here, and then the num chars it says. Up first, let's talk about the text. All that means is you want to click on the cell or type out the cell that you want Excel to separate your data from. So in this example here, I've got a bunch of different names, and it wants me to click on the cell with the name that I want to separate. So in this example, I'm going to click on A3. Once I have A3 selected, I'm going to click comma, and then you can see that it's asking me for num chars. And what that means is it's the number of characters. And when Excel says the number of characters, it's asking you how many characters to the right do you want it to return. So you can see in our example here that John Adams, the last name Adams, has got 5 different letters in it. And Excel sees every single letter as a character. So in this example, we're just going to type a 5, and then I'm going to close the parentheses, and then click enter. Once I click enter, you can see that Excel has returned just the right 5 characters, which in this instance is Adams, which is great. That's exactly what we want. I can click on my function, have the cell highlighted, and then once I go to the bottom right corner and I see kind of the black T appear, I'm going to drag it down one cell. And you can see that Excel here has taken the 5 right characters for Alex Smith and also returned Smith, which is perfect. Next to the right function, I've typed out the equals left function. And I'm not going to waste your time too much going through the nitty gritty because you can see when I open up my parentheses that it's exactly the same as the right function. But this time when we type in our data that we want, so I'm going to type A3, comma, and then I'm going to do 4 because John has got 4 letters in it, or 4 characters. You can see that it's going to return the data from the left side. The same way as before, I'm going to have my cell highlighted, go to that bottom right corner, and then drag it down 1. And you can see that, again, it's taken the left 4 characters from Alex and returned them. So this is a great and simple way to separate your data if all of your data has got the same number of characters on both sides, right? And that might be uncommon with something like names, but maybe you've got a spreadsheet with numbers that are fairly consistent, and you could just, pull the right 5 or the right 6 or the left 4, whatever you need. But where this function becomes weak is if I were to drag this down one more, you can see that it's pulling the same amount of characters as before, and it's not giving me George Washington separated or Washington George. You can see that it's pulling just the right 5 and then just the left 4 like before. Now, luckily for us, we've got a solution here. But we're going to completely get rid of the right and left function because they're no longer valid for a spreadsheet with this type of data in it. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to delete the values, and then we're going to go into something called the text to column. What the text to column button does is it essentially will look at all of your data. You're going to tell it to separate the data at a certain point that you specify, and then it's going to shoot every value to the cells to the right of where the data originally existed. So in my example here, you can see that every name is separated by blank space. So when we go into the text to columns button, we're going to say separate the data anytime that Excel occurs a blank space within the values. The first step to doing the text to columns is to highlight the data that you want separated. So in this example, I'm going to take my cursor and I'm going to highlight A3 down to A5. From here, I'm going to click on the Data tab up top, and you can see over to the right, there's a Text to Columns button. And I'm going to want to just click on this button, but again, make sure that your data is highlighted. When you first come into it, it's going to default to delimited, right? You've got these 2 options. It's going to select delimited automatically. That's actually where we want to be in this example, so we're just going to click next down below. Now this screen is really important to the text to columns and separating your data. You've got a bunch of options over on your left-hand side here. And what you select is where Excel is going to separate the data. So if you've got a spreadsheet with a bunch of commas in it, right, or your data has a bunch of commas in it, if I were to select the comma button here, every time that Excel sees a comma, it's going to separate your data and shoot it to the cell to the right. And that's going to make sense in a second. But in our example, we talked about earlier that we've got blank spaces, right? And that's where we've decided that we want to separate the data. So I just need to click on just the space instance here. And then now that I've done that, I can actually just click finish. And you can see that we've had success with separating the data. Just to show you what I was talking about earlier, I've went and I put in some numbers, all with a decimal and all with different length decimals. So the left and right function again would be a little bit limited. If we highlight our data and click text to columns again, we're going to click next the same way as before. But this time I want to separate it at the decimal point, let's say. So I'm going to unselect space, I'm going to click the other button, and I'm just going to type in the decimal or the period. From here I can click finish, and you can see that Excel once again has completely separated my data exactly how I want. So again, you can see here that there's a bunch of different options of where you want it to separate. And in addition to that, if you don't see something selected, you can kind of type out whatever you want to break it at any point. If there's a certain symbol that's there, maybe a certain letter you would want to break it at for some reason, you have that flexibility. The only thing that I want to note before we're done with this tutorial is that you'll notice when I clicked finish, it automatically shot the data to the right. And that's going to happen every single time you do text to columns. So you're going to just want to make sure that you've got a blank space to the right of the data that you're separating. And you can do that by either copying and pasting the data to the far right column, or you could just add a bunch of different columns to the right of the data that you're separating. Either option would work. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and give the video a like. If you have any questions or if you have an idea for a future video, I'm a new channel and I read every single comment, so please put it in the chat below. Thanks again for watching.